At the top of the table of everyone's got to be just about 2 or 3 issues that are taking all the air out of the room. One of them, of course, is gate. But even with gate and anything else, there is the issue of crime. There is the issue of national security. That is always going to be at the top of the table. My guest is Major General retired, the Honorable Edmund Dillon. He is the Minister of National Security. Mr. Minister, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bishop, for having me here. Let me say a pleasant good morning to the listening public of Trinidad and Tobago.
It is a Sunday morning, and to get you out on a Sunday morning is a testament to the commitment to share information with our listeners, and I'm glad that you took the time to be here.
Oh, it is indeed my pleasure. And Sunday is like any other day in the life of the Minister of National Security.
Yes, indeed. The person that, the buck stops here. That's what it comes down to. It is acknowledged that the alarming crime numbers do not surface after 1 day, 1 month, or 1 year. It takes a long time. It's a cancer that grows over a number of years. That being acknowledged, however, it is disturbing to most that with a new government coming in who was aware of the problem, that after 11 months in office, folks are beginning to get impatient because they are asking one simple question. Why are we not able to stem, if not reduce, at least stem the high level of crime, specifically murders in the country? My question to you, Mr. Minister, firstly, is why?
I think I will first answer that question by, let me put national security in a sort of context. You know, French philosopher Voltaire once said, in the beginning of any phenomenon, you must first try to define it. And so I want to start off by first defining what is national security. And while there are several definitions for national security, the one that I choose today and that I've continued to choose is one that says that national security is about the security issues and situations faced by countries. Mm-hmm. It is truly about the government policies and strategies that they adopt to treat with those issues and situations that confront them. Mm-hmm. But I think more importantly, it is about the people, the institutions, the systems, the techniques, tactics, and procedures that they adopt to treat with those very same issues that they've identified. So we must first start in terms of identify what are the issues that confront us. And your question point to, in terms of the national security landscape at this point in time, which to a large extent is characterized by murder. And in fact, that's the barometer by which most jurisdictions are measured. The murder is the one that you're measured by. And our murder rate right now is intolerable. I would admit that it is intolerable right now. Right now, we're looking about almost 274 murders, which is by far exceeds what was last year. Mm-hmm.
Last year was 271?
260 something, right? And then in previous years. So that right now it is really intolerable. When we look at, you put it in the context in terms of the crime situation so far, one has to understand that we're looking at incidents. We're looking at how many incidents comparable to last year, comparable to the years before. And you have heard the Commissioner of Police mention in terms of serious reported crimes being reduced, and that is a fact. While we say murder is the number one barometer, when we look at the remainder of crime in its entirety, which touches serious crimes, really touches areas from murder all the way down to larceny. In fact, by definition, serious reported crimes are crimes that incur a penalty of more than 5 years, and one that is the crimes that have concerns to the citizens at large. And so in terms of other than murder, the serious crimes have been reduced to the extent that in 2015 to date, there were about 7,000 reported serious crimes, and today they're just about 6,000. Not much to boast about, but there have been a trending downwards in terms of serious reported crime. And with respect to the murder rate right now, we've seen that the murder rate, there has been troughs and valleys and so on as we go along. And the security forces are in fact using what we consider concentration of force at the right time and place, with a mixture of intelligence-led operations, in a mixture of gathering the kind of important information and intelligence to treat with the murder rate right now. It is not one at which we are not concerned about. And your question points to the fact that 11 months now, and therefore, what have we been doing? I can say that we have been drilling down from that, what they call the government policy framework, which is in fact a whole of government approach, insisting that since crime is one of our number one issues, and it is, as you articulated, and in fact articulated in the press and so on, and the concerns of the people. It suggests, and it means that the entire government must concentrate its efforts towards crime and criminality. And that has been the government approach. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the Ministry of Community Development, Social Development, Public Utilities, Sports and Youth Affairs, they all have a remit to treat with it, while national security is a center of focus. And we continue to bring together our agencies of national security, namely, which is of course the lead agency, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, supported by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, of course supported by the Strategic Services Agency, supported by immigration, supported by even our prisons have an important role to play in the security framework because of course within the prison population, we have found that there are a number of intelligence that we can gather there. So we've tapped into the prisons as a part of that. So that what we have been doing is in fact having examined what I call the national security agencies is a question of bringing those institutions together in a cooperative and collaborative manner to treat the issues of crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's where we are going right now. And I think we are beginning to see the fruits of those cooperation and collaboration to a large extent.
Not unaware that a lot of the direct crime questions folks may have would be something that would go at the door of the Commissioner of Police or the Acting Commissioner of Police. National security is all-encompassing and it deals with the state generally. But the buck does stop at your desk in the sense of what happens with the police service. I'm looking at 4 areas you articulated this last week. The 4-prong approach that is being taken to deal with the high numbers in crime we have here. Prediction, deterrence, detection, and prosecution, which is an area that you did not mention a moment ago, but the judiciary has a big part to play in completing this process. But let me take the 4-prong approach and start with the question of prediction, because one would believe that when you speak of prediction, you're speaking of intelligence gathering.
Yeah, that's correct.
We are talking about, one assumes, however, that if that is part of the 4-prong approach, that something has not been happening in that area before, or it has been so relegated or discarded as an important part of the crime fighting toolbox, that is one of the reasons why our detection is so bad. Speak to that, please.
Right. And I have articulated these as drawing down from the policy of the government in terms of a strategy going forward. The strategy must be based on some kind of framework. And so that framework is based on those 4 areas, the areas of prediction, deterrence, detection, and prosecution. And you rightly mentioned, in terms of prediction, we're talking about being able to tell the future to some extent, being able to tell what is going to happen, being able to be proactive in treating with crime and criminality. Because if you want to really prevent crime, you have to be proactive. You have to be able to be ahead of those perpetrators. You have to be able to be one step ahead of those who intend and committed crimes and so on. And so we must be able to sharpen that prediction pillar. And it is based on gathering the necessary kind of information, converting it into the necessary kind of intelligence, converting that into the necessary kind of evidence at the end of the day. And so how do you do that? You do that by focusing your institution, building institutional capacity, strengthening your institutions. So you do an assessment. What is the position or the status of our intelligence capacity agencies right now? And you realize that, yes, we do have them, but are they producing the kind of intelligence requirement that you need to effect? Because at the end of the day, it is towards an end. It is towards an end to what? The end is really to deter. The end is really to treat with and to get evidence at the end of the day. And to take appropriate action, of course. So we do have intelligence agencies. And what we have found is that we need now to bring those intelligence agencies together. So we have the intelligence capacity that we've built right now in terms of the Strategic Services Agency. We have just restructured that entire agency with a strong intelligence gathering capacity. And we continue to build on that. We have the Criminal Gang and Intelligence Unit of the Police Service. We have the Special Branch of the Police Service. We have the Defense Force Intelligence Unit. And we have other intelligence agencies which I wouldn't go at length to describe right now. But those are all focused on different areas. But then they must come together in a certain way, because at the end of the day, I said, the remit of the Ministry of National Security is to provide a safe and secure environment for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. At the end of the day, is to prevent people from committing kind of offenses to affect that same safety and security of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So the prediction module has to do with gathering the kind of intelligence towards either a conviction, or either an arrest, at the end of the day, prosecution at the end of the day. But it must be done in a way that all comes together in what we call a common operational picture. So that everything is focused and concentrated, and then you can take the necessary action, as opposed to operating in stovepiles or in parallels and so on. We are driving this pillar so that we get together, we have a collaborative and cooperative approach where all the intelligence come into a fusion center and the necessary action is taken to the agencies that require. And that's across all the spectrum, not only in terms of the police service, but across the spectrum in terms of the defense force, who have a remit for maritime security, for instance, who have a remit for aerial security, for instance. So it comes into that vein. And the fusion center then determines, is it intelligence for the maritime domain? Then it goes on to that.
The sharing of information is definitely a very important part of that. But I want to stay in this first area, Mr. Minister, in case you just tuned in to us. My guest is the Honorable Edmund Dillon, who is the Minister of National Security, a Major General retired. Let me just let you know about him in case you don't. He retired as the Chief of the Defense Staff of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force in 2018. Prior to his appointment as Chief of Defense Staff, he held a position as the Commanding Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. He served as a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force for over 36 years, does not even look it, beginning his career as an enlisted member of the Coast Guard before accepting a position as a commissioned officer in the regiment. Being inside of there, you understand the integrity of an organization. You understand that the citizenry must have full confidence in the protective service, because this is still a bit the first area of prediction, which is intelligence gathering. Part of intelligence gathering is that no law and order body can ever get 3/4 of the information they need to get without the cooperation of the eyes on the ground, which is to say the citizenry. Yeah. We have a problem of confidence of the general population in the protective service. From a number in the protective services, I did not just say the police, because you can hear it just about everywhere. It is not only in one branch, one arm of the protective service, it's in all of them. It is suspected. So how are we treating with this issue of what some folks would say, cleaning house and putting up something where folks feel that after they have made a report to any of the branches, that information does not hit the street before they get back home?
Good. And let me say that you've struck a nail there in terms of the kind of intelligence that's required. And what we call in military terms or in security terms, human intelligence is one of the most important form of intelligence. I mean, you have the technology and so on, but if you get a human intelligence working for you, and this is where the citizen comes in. If you can get people on the ground who, as we say, you see it, report it, you see it, tell us you see it, text it. So that if we get that first-hand information, the cooperation from the citizenry, it will go a long way in building the same intelligence picture that we talk about. And so we would encourage the citizenry to be part and parcel of that prediction pillar, to be part and parcel of the intelligence information sharing pillar, because the agencies of national security cannot be on every corner of Trinidad and Tobago at any one point in time. They could be in some areas, but they cannot be in all areas. And so we depend on the larger citizenry to assist in so far as providing the kind of information, the kind of intelligence that's required to assist us in our job. And you speak to the area of confidence in the protective services. And by virtue of definition, the protective services really means the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Fire Service, the Prison Service, and then we have the Defense Force and the Protective Services. So those are the agencies, primarily we call the tip of the spear that are out front and so on. And so in terms of confidence building, it has to do with a lot in terms of trust. Confidence is based on trust. And how do we build the kind of trust that's required for the citizenry to feel comfortable with our agencies, with the agencies of the state? It has to do with getting involved in the community to a large extent. Getting involved and getting to know. That's how we build a relationship. You can't build a relationship from a distance. You have to get close and comfortable with the people who you are there to protect and serve, the people who are there to defend, the people who are there to secure. And so there have been several initiatives being done. And it started with the police service, for instance. The police service have started, they've had what you call community meetings throughout the 9 divisions. And the divisional commanders have been empowered by the Commissioner of Police to hold these community meetings throughout the divisions to hear and understand and to talk with the people of the various communities that they work in. And so that has been going on quite successfully. We allow the people to come in and share information, to talk, to ask questions, to make recommendations and so on. And that's been done throughout the 9 divisions of Trinidad and Tobago. We've also initiated what we call the Station Council. And the Station Council brings together in the various station districts the major stakeholders, the business communities, the NGOs, the faith-based organizations, the schools supervisors and the school principals and so on in the various areas to come together, again, to treat the issues that are pertinent to the various areas. And so that has been working quite nicely. But I think one of the largest contributors right now is the youth clubs, the police youth clubs. There are approximately 10,000 children right now in the police youth clubs across Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, only on Friday, I in fact took a march with what we re-established in my own constituency in Point Fortin. And let me say a pleasant good morning to my constituency of Point Fortin that stretches from Cochrane to Icacus, including Buenos Aires, Erin, Granville, Siege, and all those places in Point Fortin constituency. A pleasant good morning to you all. The people who have supported me and voted for me and have me as the MP from Point Fortin. Thank you. So I said the youth club, we established one in Guapo on Friday, and we had a march throughout Guapo, together with the police youth club from Faizabad and from Siparia. They joined us in that march. And you've seen the kind of energy from those young children. Last night, at the Pan Foundation in Laventille, if you heard the police youth club from Laventille, they were there and they performed melodiously, and you can see the energy coming from those children. You can see that the youth club is taking a position that I think that we're down to success. Not today. You wouldn't see it today, but I think you're going to see it in the years to come. Because if you take 10,000 children in that youth club, if you put at least one parent with that 10,000, you have 10,000 parents. And if you put the uncles and the aunties who are there, you see them together with those children in any event and so on, you're seeing the multiplier effect.
One of the heads of the youth clubs, we've had him here a number of times, Officer Shabadi, because this is, as you said, this is the age where they are recruited. This is the age where they are vulnerable. This is the age where they feel they are invincible. This is the impressionable age, and that has to be the group that we're going with. But still, Mr. Minister, I know that you were making some of this, an example of some of the outreach that's been going on, but the confidence of knowing that the people in the station are not going to be working against you once you make a report primarily is the problem.
Right. And to that extent, we've started some customer relations training, because we realize, and you hear the reports, that sometimes you go to the police station or you go to various agencies and so on, and the kind of treatment as though you are not a citizen that is entitled to the kind of treatment that's required. And so we recognize that, and so we initiated some kind of customer relations training to treat, and we've done it across the spectrum. As a matter of fact, recently we did it with immigration, for instance, in terms of how do you treat with people who are coming for your service, because you're here to service the people of Trinidad and Tobago at the end of the day. So we recognize that, and so one of the ways going forward is to prepare people for those kind of first line impression that they create when people come to them for assistance, and understanding that they're there as servants of the state to serve the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So we were dealing with that. But again, the whole question of confidentiality and trust, again, has to do with how do we project ourselves, and more importantly, what do we do as a measure of deterrent when people have run counter to what we expect them to do. And that to my mind is is the greatest approach, in that you have to prevent a certain kind of behavior. You have to discourage a certain kind of behavior by taking certain kind of actions. And what we have said to the agencies is that when someone does not treat the civilians or the civil population a certain way, then a certain kind of message must be sent.
And when one is found to be in league with those who go afoul of the law and work against any society existing, functioning peacefully, then equally the equal tough treatment must be meted out.
And that is correct, especially if you are in the line of service. If you are found to be going contrary to your own oath, to their own honor, integrity, that you have set your standards for, and you've gone contrary to that, then you should face the full brunt of the law. As I said to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and Trinidad Prison Service, if a police officer does something wrong, don't let them hide their face and so on and shield them. If they have done something, then they must be treated as just as any ordinary citizens.
There are some other aspects of that I want to go into, but I want to stay with the four-prong approach. We were just dealing, listeners, would you believe, only with the prediction. My guest is, as he made sure and clearly mentioned, the Member of Parliament for Point Fortin, the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Edmund Dillon, is with us. So prediction, we looked at deterrence. Deterrence is the second part of this, and I believe deterrence either requires more police officers, more cameras, etc. And if that is correct, are we expecting to see more civilians being into the bureaucratic process and more officers coming out of the precincts, the police stations, and going into the streets? Is that what we are to expect, or do we have sufficient people outside? It's just a question of deployment.
Right. Deterrence is that, but a little more than that. Deterrence again has to do with presence, of course. But not only just presence, the kind of presence that's required to deter someone from committing a certain kind of behavior, end up in a certain kind of behavior. And deterrence means presence, for instance, in terms of the police service, for instance. Deterrence means you see more police vehicles on the road. You see more police on the streets. You see more police in terms of operations. You see a more targeted operations. You see operations, you see defense, you see certain kind of actions that tells you that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they're there. They're almost in your face to a large extent. So that if you are intent and committed something, you say you want to check yourself and say, no, there's a likelihood or probability that I will be found as soon as it is done, because they're almost present. And you use deterrence in the term not only in terms of the physical presence, but in terms of technology. You use the technology as a form of deterrence. So cameras around you tells you that there's a certain kind of deterrent, that we may discover you. It's possible that we may find you or see you and capture an image of you performing a certain kind of act. So that's deterrence in extent. But deterrence not only resides in the police service, deterrence also resides in terms of the defense force. How do we patrol our waters? And the fact that we have a Coast Guard vessel down at Cedros or Ikakas, a Coast Guard vessel down at Shakashakari, it means that presence of that vessel itself is a form of deterrence. So deterrence spreads across the spectrum. It tells us that by our mere presence, whether in terms of technology or physical presence or using our assets, using our equipment, we are saying that we will find you out as soon as possible. We'll discover your act as soon as possible and take the necessary actions. So deterrence has to do with a lot of components coming together.
I concur with that, and I'm happy that you just touched in that area of those patrolling our coastlines, i.e. The boats necessary. Is the Coast Guard sufficiently equipped now, or in the near future expected to be equipped sufficiently that the ministry can say we feel comfortable that we have the tools in place? One, because there was this infusion of money to your ministry, the biggest allocation, and I know there are many places you had to put that, but there are also those who question what of our helicopters and so on patrolling our landscape.
In terms of our maritime security environment, and I want to say that our maritime security environment is in fact one of our center of focus right now, because if you trace back to what we call the number one issues of crime is murder. When you look at the weapon of choice in murder is the weapon, the gun. When you say, where does the gun come from? We don't manufacture guns in Trinidad and Tobago, so therefore it comes some external to Trinidad and Tobago, through our maritime, through our aerial, through our ports and seaports. And so the Coast Guard has a very important role to play in securing our maritime security environment. With respect to the assets we have, and this government is a caring government. This government is not one that just do away with what has been procured before. We came into government, and there was a procurement that was done last minute, as I may add. I mean, just in 2015, the last government decided that they're going to procure 6 vessels plus interceptors on board. They call it 12 by 6 vessels really, with the additional interceptors on board. We have received 4 of those vessels so far, the Daemon vessels, 2 logistics and 4 fast patrol vessels. And we are utilizing those vessels. We're utilizing them in our maritime security environment to protect our borders, to act as deterrence, but also to take the necessary action to prevent penetration of our borders across Trinidad and Tobago. Because Trinidad and Tobago has roughly about almost 480-something kilometers of coastline, plus Tobago another 180. But we, by virtue of geography, lies as the first step, as they say, the vortex from the Americas. And so we can't remove our geography. As I said before, I'm from Point Forte. I grew up in Kakuan Village, Guapo. So that I'm accustomed to, there's always been movement from the South American mainland to Ikakas over time. What has happened now is, while in days gone by you might have had the other groceries and so on coming across and people, the commodity has changed. The commodity has changed to the drugs, the guns. We have seen trafficking in persons coming and so on. So the commodity in the same vessel has changed. And so we have to take different kinds of actions, different kinds of measures to treat that penetration of those things coming through our borders.
So we are optimistic about the additional 4 crafts so far, 6 expected to assist that. What is going on with the air patrol?
But no, we're still going to build capacity in the maritime domain. We don't have this, I don't like to go back to it, but the offshore patrol vessels would have given us a certain kind of platform that would have extended our reach, but then that's history. So I don't want to go back in that history. So we still have to build capacity in the Coast Guard. While we use what we have, we continue to build capacity. Because if we can secure at least 99% of our maritime borders, then we're going to prevent the infiltration of things as we do a 2-pronged approach. Prevent it from coming in and deal with what is here at the same time. So even in terms of our seizures and so on, we have exceeded last year by far. We think 465 weapons have been seized so far for this year. Last year's total was about 420. So for even this year, we have surpassed last year in terms of seizure of weapons in country. Right? The Coast Guard itself has had some successes on the sea. We've had a large bust quite recently, one of the largest in terms of that has caused some consternation in the drug pushers and drug in Trinidad and Tobago. right?
So you are. It's taking some time, but you are making some inroads. Detection is another area of the four-prong approach. Again, reminding our listeners, the four-prong approach is prediction, deterrence, detection, and prosecution. Let's talk about detection. The detection rate was 17.8 between August 2014 and March 2015, but for the same months in late 2017, it went up to, in April, the figure was as low, went down to 8.6%. That's the kind of detection rate that we're looking at. That is way below what the acting commissioner of police had predicted and set for his folks. Why is the detection rate going down this low? Why is it this low, and what is being done about it? Equally?
And we are certainly not comfortable with our detection rate right now. Hence the reason why we say that must be one of our pillars going forward. Must be one of the areas that we must strengthen. And what is required right now is to build the capacity in terms of training and preparing our investigators, because time has changed, technology has changed, and so we have to be up to date and all current with what's going on in security environment. The whole question of the internet, the whole question of social media, all those are part and parcel of building your detection capacity. And so the necessary tools and equipment are being provided to treat with those issues. But it has to do with training, it has to do with preparation, and it has to do with gathering the cadre of individuals that's required to really focus. And the commission have done some restructuring in terms of the Homicide Bureau of Investigation and so on. So he has done some work with that. He has made some changes. He's made some structural changes. And he has articulated some way going forward. And I think we should bear some fruit in the near, not too distant future. But we are not comfortable. We are not comfortable with detection rate, because at the end of the day, when we say prediction, when we say deterrence, it has to resound in detection. Our efforts must be resound in detection. We're not at a state of war. If we are at a state of war, we're not looking at prosecution. We're not looking at detection. We're looking at eliminate our enemy. But we are not at that. The end state is to bring people before the court of Trinidad and Tobago for the justice to take its place. And there, it has to be based on detection. And detection is important in gathering the kind of evidence that's required to lead a proper and a possible charge, so eventually the court can determine the outcome, but give them enough evidence for a conviction at the end of the day. So we have to continue to build the capacity, both in terms of the human resource element, but also the use of technology. And of course, we have been liaising with our international experts outside who have been, from time to time, have been here, giving us some ideas and working alongside with us to build the capacity in terms of crime scene investigation, in terms of, getting the kind of information that's required to have for detection. So we continue to build that capacity.
Detection and prosecution are so closely linked. We can just have them share in the same place. So the speed in preparing cases also, because one of the things we find is cases are brought before the judiciary, which is an important part in this, but oftentimes we hear that the prosecution is not ready to go forward. The police is not ready to go forward. And that, I assume, is going to be a case where we have the detection and the gathering of information, so where they all come in here, coming together to put a case that, in fact, we can assist the judiciary wherever possible to speed this process along.
Right, and it's not a simple issue in terms of gathering kind of, it's not as simple, it's a complex issue, because if you really want to have conviction, sometimes you have to take your time in gathering the kind of information, converting it into evidence. And then, of course, the police must work together with the DPP, who in fact would pass his instruction out in terms of preferring charges and so on. So it's a combination of elements coming together in terms of getting successful prosecution. And what is important is almost at the beginning stage. How much do you do from the time an event takes place? And that is so important. And so those kind of sensitization has been taking place in terms of our crime scene investigators, because the case starts to build from the time the offense is discovered. You have to start building that case and getting the kind of information that's required for conviction at the end of the day. And so that trend of thought, that trend of behavior is what is being stimulated right now, so that it gives effects that you have a certain pattern. And that's some of the learnings that we've had in our interaction with some of our international partners and so on. How do you start from the time it's been discovered or from the time the event has occurred, to build that case.
Satisfied, you will never be one because you are an army man. Secondly, because results are the only things going to make you satisfied. And then a thing like crime, it's dynamic. You never get to a point where you're totally arrested. So you have to take what you get out of it. But the citizenry is asking the question, with all that you have said, not articulated, just not this last time, but all that you said before that, all that they're hearing, when can they reasonably expect to see the data collection, the retraining, the redeployment, and the building of confidence of the citizenry in the protective services? When can they expect to see these things coming home to start impacting in any way that they feel the impunity with which crimes are committed now, daytime, high day, just about anywhere, people walk into anywhere and start shooting? When can they expect to see this impacting reasonably? You're not a magician. Nobody is saying that you need to be. When can they reasonably expect to start seeing something so that they can feel they live in a place where the law is in charge and not the criminal?
It's difficult to put a timeline.
Of course.
It's difficult to put a timeline on that. But what I can say is that we continue to build the capacity and strengthen the institution to bring the kind of results that we expect. And, as we go forward, you look at crime and criminality. And when you look at the crime right now in terms of the motive for crime, you're breaking it down to let's look at murders, for instance. And you look at the highest percentage of murders are gang-related, followed by drugs-related, followed by the domestic violence, which is one we can't predict. And we're saying that if you isolate these issues, which is the one that we can prevent using our 4 pillars in terms of prediction, in terms of deterrence, in terms of detection and so on, the gangs-related, the drugs-related, we can hardly predict to a large extent the domestic violence related kind of murders because that happens on the spur of the moment. It's emotional. But you see, so let us focus on some of our pillars in terms of the gang related murders, in terms of the drugs related murders, in terms of the revenge killings and so on. Because those are some of the ones that we can detect, we can predict, we should be able to predict based on some history behind those things.
Honorable Minister, let me cross you for a moment because you're quite right in that area. We see that after the RoboCop incident, we see an increased patrol of police and the protective services generally, and so far that has been kept at bay. But there are other areas where these gangs are known to be, and yet we still have this proliferation of violence, and one wonders, well, if you do that for here, why haven't we closed down a couple other places with the same approach?
And again, it has to be done in a certain systematic manner. And so while we are mapped out in terms of the territories across Trinidad and Tobago in terms of what are the nature of the security environment, we then have to do what we call concentration of force at the right time and place to be able to, we can't move across all specters at the same time. So we focus our energies. And so we have seen that we have done some work in the Lavantil area, we've done some work in the Enterprise area, we have operations in the San Fernando, Marbella area, in the southwestern peninsula. And so all the divisional commanders have been charged. And you've heard me articulate this sometime. We have empowered the divisional commanders to take charge of the real estate, as I call it. Just imagine the 9 divisional commanders own up and take owner of their real estate. You can imagine they know exactly what happens in the 9 division. They know who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who are the drug runners, who are the gun runners, and you concentrate on each and every one in those areas. If someone moved from Division A to Division B, then the transformation. And if you take that and you really take ownership, and you say, nobody comes in my division that I don't know. You know, long ago when you had the sergeant in the police station, everybody knew the sergeant was in the police station.
That's right.
And the sergeant and man used to say, I'll see you in the police station. And you walk without thinking.
Or he used to say, go down and tell them what you did.
That's right.
Tell them
I sent you. Yes. Divisional commanders now must take charge of their division. People in the division must know who the divisional commanders are. In other words, they must be able to relate with them. But he himself, or she, because they are female and male who are in charge of the divisional commanders, they must now take so much control of the divisions. As it says, a building block approach. If each take control of the division, we can take control of this place. And
one of the areas technology can also help is for them to have a Facebook page where folks can anonymously report what they see.
That's right.
Not Facebook necessarily, but at least a website, so folks can come in there, because that's using technology, but it addresses a number of issues, including the one we touched on earlier when we spoke in the area of of prediction because you have to get the data. Folks can feel comfortable putting information there, and of course the police will sift through that and decide what they want to pursue. But the person is not going to feel, if I come to the station, that officer will see me and my name will be on the streets before. So that's something the divisional commanders can look at. I know that you did a small Moses for me this morning, imparting the way to squeeze us in, and there are a whole lot of issues I want to cover here. While I'm aware that some of the answers to the following, the question of foreign fighters, lie in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Attorney General Office, there are some questions that I still believe you can make clear for us. And the first question I want to ask before I go into the returning fighters is, what constitutes a foreign fighter?
I think we have to look at the United Nations security definition. That really speaks to a foreign fighter as an individual who travels to a state other than their own for the purpose of really planning, preparing, or participating in terrorist-type activities or conflict-related activities. And that's the United Nations definition. All right? And so, but in terms of a terrorist himself, they are homegrown terrorists. So in addition to the United Nations definition, you don't have to travel to be defined as a terrorist. It depends on the activities that you're engaged in. If your activities is to destabilize the state, if your activities is to terrorize people, literally terrorism come from terrorism. And if the terrorize people, terrorize the citizenry, then you can be classified as a terrorist.
But I use it in the and thank you, in the context of the returning fighters that we're hearing about. It's almost rhetorical because we have discussed it before, but let me have you clear it up, because people are still saying we should bar these people from returning. Can a national be barred from entering his country upon deportation?
You cannot bar a citizen from returning home to his country. What you can do, you can arrest them. There's a difference between barring you and arresting you. So you can return to Trinidad and Tobago. But if you have committed an offense that again contravenes the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2005, then we can arrest you. So this land in the airport, we can arrest you.
This group that you allegedly went to fight for must be listed as one of those countries deemed a terrorist country.
That's correct. And the Attorney General has been following that. In fact, he has named one individual so far. He has named one agency so far, ISIL, and he has made before the court, as a matter of fact, several other agencies and institutions throughout the world to be listed as terrorist organizations. So that the Attorney General is working on the legislative aspect of this while we deal with the operational aspect. And I believe that we have a suite of legislation that we can use. The Proceed of Crime Act. We can use the Proceed of Crime Act against someone. We can use anyone who is involved in financing or supporting terrorist activities. We can use that against them. So that if you look at the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2005, amended in 2010, and you look at Section 22A and B, it defines as terrorist as someone who is involved in either directly or indirectly, so that you don't have to be directly involved, Indirectly, once you have the evidence that you are indirectly involved in terrorist activities, either supporting them financially or otherwise, you can be prosecuted in contravening of that act.
Even given comfort to.
Of course, even given comfort to. Supporting anyway, harboring, giving comfort to, providing financial assistance, providing whatever assistance. So if you knowingly supporting, then you can be convicted.
So a citizen of this country, as we said, cannot be barred. He can be arrested if he violates the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, and that is the groups that we put up there as terrorist groups if we go out there to do anything for them. The question then is those who are here but cannot be arrested because it is not proven that they in fact work for one of those quote-unquote terrorist organizations. How is he, she, they going to be monitored is the question. I know I cannot possibly, no one can expect you to detail exactly all the ways they will be monitored, but the citizenry is asking the question, how can we feel any degree of comfort when we're not hearing anybody saying about, how are we going to monitor these people?
Again, it has to do with intelligence, it has to do with mapping and so on, with the activities and building the kind of what you call networking intelligence gathering to treat with those who are in some way involved in terrorist activities, either here or abroad. And so we have to do with mapping that out. And monitoring, of course, has to do with secret monitoring. Quite frankly, and I'm putting it quite outside there. It cannot be open monitoring for obvious reasons.
Obviously.
And therefore, to go into detail would not be, I can't do that, but I can say, and I can reassure the people of Trinidad and Tobago that we are doing all that we can, and even more, not only using our local assets, but international partners and so on, to treat with and get in the kind of evidence that's required to prepare ourselves to be proactive in treating with people who are involved in terrorist activities in Trinidad and Tobago and those who are abroad.
It is true then to say that that sort of monitoring and that information gathering would ward against what some folks are worried about, the possibility of returnees using their advanced weaponry training and unleashing that on the street.
I want to assure the public, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that your agencies of the state are prepared to treat with any eventualities insofar as that is concerned. And again, first of all, we do the legislative thing. So that if we know that there are people returning from those areas that they've gone to, and we have enough evidence, then we're going to arrest them on site. And therefore they go through the court procedure. If for some reason they don't have the evidence and as citizens they have to come, they return to this country, then we have a different way of treating with them. Both operationally, both in terms of intelligence, and both in terms of treating, being prepared, be prepared to be proactive in treating with them. So that I can assure you that we have the necessary institutions, we have the necessary capacity to treat with that and that eventuality.
The only other way we can do this, of course, is for the following question is to be the minority police, which is to arrest people before they even commit an act, which is to be the thought police. Because many folks are asking, what can you do? What can be done to stop these people from leaving here and going out to other countries to fight?
Again, that is a very important question, because while we look at what is happening, we now have to get to the root. What is the motivational factors? What is motivating young people from Trinidad and Tobago to go to faraway places? What is the motivational factor? And therefore, we have to work together with faith-based organizations. We have to work together with the schools. We have to work together with the communities. And to a large extent, get to the, what they call, interpretive understanding, get behind the actions of the actor and almost get into your minds to find out what would cause you to do something like that. And therefore, we have to be able to treat with those issues as we discover them. And we continue to engage our religious partners and so on. We continue to engage because we believe, quite frankly, that the radicals who have gone that path are in the minority. The majority are people who are very religious, who understand their faith, even the faith of Islam. They understand it significantly, and they are very religious people. But what's important, again, is for, as Edmund Burke once said, evil flourishes when great men fail to act.
That's right.
And so the good men must come out and talk. The good people must come out and speak out against those. The good people must come out and speak against this and take actions against it, whether it is to walk, whether it is to talk, whatever you have to say. Because if you follow Edmund Burke's philosophy, that evil flourishes when good men fail to act, and I feel we have the majority of good men and women in Trinidad and Tobago. So using that philosophy, let the good people of Trinidad and Tobago come out and speak against these kinds of atrocities.
I will take that to the next level, Honorable Minister, by saying the chicken and the egg theory has been there for a while too. On the one hand, you're quite right, over 99% of the population, good people want to cooperate. But back to what we were talking about, you can only cooperate if you feel a sense of confidentiality if you come forward. And that's why the onus again goes back to the early part of the four-prong plan. You have prediction, deterrence, detection, and prosecution. All three, save for the last one, all three, even the last one, because you need witnesses. All of them necessitate folks having confidence in the protective service. So the idea of cleaning out house, I believe, and you will correct me, of course, all of these things are predicated on a clean house. Clean house must be the first thing done.
And I agree with you. In order to conduct our business, we have to ensure that we are prepared also. We're able and capable to do so. And so we addressed it from all sides. We were going to discourage the kind of deviant behavior within our own institutions to a large extent. But at the same time, we want to make our agencies accessible to the wider public. We want to build the kind of confidence that's required so that they feel comfortable coming and talk to us, whether directly or indirectly, and provide the different kind of means, the different kind of avenues for them to do so. And so it's a continuing building. It has to continue because, you can build a relationship for years and just one event could destroy that trust in society. So we can continue to build those relationships. and ask the citizens to work along with us.
The divisional commanders you mentioned must understand very clearly that amongst their priority or parallel to anything that they're doing has to be the issue of cleaning house.
Of course they do, and I think the Commissioner of Police have articulated that in several times. The Commissioner of Prisons has articulated that to a large extent. And to some extent, the Chief of Defense Staff have shown by his own actions that they're not going to tolerate this kind of deviant behavior within their institutions. And that is sending a message. That is sending a strong message to deter those who want to do so. Because again, you have to understand that all the institutions I mentioned, they recruit from the same society that they come from.
Yes.
They recruit from the same society. The young men who come into these institutions come from the same blocks that those who are involved in drugs and guns are from. They have taken a choice, and I congratulate them for that. They have taken a choice to make a difference. But again, in all the training that you do, you may reach 99% of the individuals who could convert. Sometimes there's a 1% that you can't convert, and they continue in the deviant ways. Notwithstanding their training, notwithstanding their part of an institution, they continue in deviant ways. And those are the ones you have to set the example with.
There is no rule without an exception.
Right.
As I said, you did your little Moses thing and parted the waters for us this morning, but I know you're not taking a helicopter to where you're going, no pun intended. So let me throw my last question at you. We were talking about deterrence, and we're talking about having things in place to deter. Thus far, we've had good results coming out of the speed guns and so on. This may be a question directed to the police commissioner, but if you can clarify for me, please do so if you can assist. Many folks are saying 6 guns have been doing a good job. When are the others coming? Because, we heard there are many more to come.
That's right.
Mr. Minister, what's up with that?
And the 6 guns were, in fact, a measure of testing to see how... And we have had successes with those 6 guns so far. We have seen a change in behavior, which is what we want at the end of the day. A change not only because of speed gun, we want to get a change on deterrence. When you see a policeman on the street, it's supposed to act as a certain kind of deterrence also. So the change of behavior is based on that presence, whether on the sea, whether on the land, whether on, that's what we expected. So the speed gun was just one thing. And measures are being put in place right now to procure the remainder of we do analysis of the 6 that we've received. Are they the correct ones that we need? Is there more? Is there additional kind of technology that's required? And so that is being taken care of right now. Procurement of speed gun is done through the Ministry of Works and Transport.
All right, so my final question in thanking you is going to be this. We just have had an agreement with Venezuela to work with us in patrolling certain parts of our border. How is that working out, one, and are we looking for that sort of thing? Is there something like this that would work in a regional context? So is there that sort of regional cooperation to assist with information that assists in border protection for us and for them, mutually beneficial agreements like that?
Right. I want to answer that question in 2 ways. One, I want to talk about what initiative being done here in Trinidad and Tobago, because we are now establishing a joint border protection agency. And that joint border protection agency involves the customs, which is not part of the Ministry of National Security, it's part of finance, but they have a role to play in border protection. So the customs, immigrations, our seaports and airports, the airport authority, the port authority, because they have all the ports across Trinidad and Tobago. There are about almost 21 or 22 active ports in Trinidad and Tobago. So they are also part of that border protection. So if you put those entities together with the defense force, together with the police, what we're doing is developing that joint border protection agency, almost akin to the Custom Border Protection in the United States. The concept is similar to that, where you have all those entities in one area, bringing all the information. So they understand that they are part of the security environment. And that is being formed right now. We have a team looking at that in conceptual clarity. Because again, the border is important to us. And we installed pipes so far. So we're bringing that together. And the question of the Venezuelans has to do with, we've had several high-level discussions throughout the year in Venezuela. Notwithstanding, in 2005, we established the bilateral cooperation with Venezuela. We just re-established that within recent times. Because we realize that Trinidad and Tobago, developed West Coast, faces Venezuela, literally undeveloped East Coast. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge because the Orinoco River starts in Colombia, 17,000 kilometers, all the way down to Trinidad and Tobago. And that's a river, not a river that we know as Caroni River. It's huge. Anything can pass through that. And so so we have to be able to work collaboratively with the Venezuelans. And this is what we have been doing. We initiated that kind of discussion. A couple of months ago, the commanding officer of the Venezuelan Coast Guard, Guardia Costa, came to Trinidad. As after I held discussion with the Minister of the Interior in Venezuela. And we dealt with certain issues on cooperation and collaboration to the extent where we drill down to understanding one-to-one contact. Who's in charge here, who's in charge here, on both sides. So they continue discussion. They don't have to go through that whole bureaucratic framework through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so on. They can talk directly to one another. So that we know that a Venezuelan ship is coming on this way, we know that a Trinidadian ship is going on this way. We want to take that a stage further, where we have sailors from Trinidad and Tobago on a Venezuelan ship. Sailors from a Venezuelan ship on a Trinidad. So we negotiating that right now, because we have to cooperate with one another. Because on both sides of the house, they have to prevent what is coming across us. And we have to be able to relate to what is coming across us also. But also we have going across to them too. Notwithstanding, it's two-way trade. It's two-way trade. So we have to work collaboratively and cooperatively to treat with those issues. So far, our discussions have been going quite well. We have an exercise coming up called Ventry, which is Ven for Trinidad, for Venezuela, and TRI for Trinidad, exercise Ventry, where we're going to practice, operationalize what we are talking about right now. And that's a joint exercise. And that will, again, set the framework for operations.
Fantastic. The other reason that I had mentioned the whole thing of regional is because a lot of folks are either coming from places to do their stuff here and run back in the region, and because it's coming so difficult for them to get out to the United States or other places, they're doing their business right here in the region, and that is why the sharing of information concerns me so much.
And again, I want to say that our Prime Minister has definitely taken up the mantle and the leadership as a lead Prime Minister for Crime and Security in the region. As a matter of fact, he has made his presence felt even the first heads of government meeting in Jamaica. So we have seen a real surgeon of Trinidad and Tobago has taken the lead of crime and security in Trinidad and Tobago. And to that extent, we have the CARICOM institutions, two of which are based here in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the Regional Intelligence Fusion Center. And to a large extent, we have been sharing and cooperating and coordinating information across the region at a CARICOM level. And what we have been doing has been, we have been to a large extent filling the gap left by our international partners. So Trinidad and Tobago working together with Barbados, for instance, the Eastern Caribbean, we dealt with in terms of patrolling. Both our air assets and our sea assets. Our air assets go as far up as Antigua in terms of aerial patrols, together with our Barbados counterparts.
Got you.
And so we liaise and coordinate and so on at a regional level.
It has been truly a pleasure having you here, Mr. Minister. It's been enlightening having you here in some of the areas we covered. As I said, I know that you're on a time constraint, so we truncated a couple of things without attempting to abuse it, but we will at some point get back in touch with you and ask you to be here with us, because this is an ongoing situation, particularly the first part. What is it? 4 prong: prediction, deterrence, detection, prosecution. We need the public in this, and the public needs to hear from the Minister of National Security on a lot of these issues. I'm happy for the divisional heads, because the public needs to hear from them. Oftentimes you have other people getting in the media and defining what is going on in national security. They're defining it for us as against us doing it when we should be. So in that area, I thank you so much. I trust that you get to your event. I will take full responsibility for the minister being late. But so thank you so very much.
It was always a pleasure. And let me say thanks a lot for the listening public. It certainly was my pleasure sharing with you information with respect to national security. And I urge each and every one of us to help to assist us as we go forward. The remit is really for our institutions. Yes. But at the end of the day, crime and criminality is about all of us. National security is about all of us. And let us all play our part. And again, as Edmund Burke said, evil flourish when good men or good women fail to act. Let us all act positively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.